This year marks the 70th anniversary of the victory of the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and the end of the Second World War. In his book, Forgotten Ally, China's World War II, 1937 to 1945, Rana Mitter, a professor of history at Oxford University, tells how the Chinese played an essential role in the wider war effort and made great sacrifices.
I think Western readers, for the most part, from what I know, have been really surprised and interested by the story that they read in the book. In other words, the story of China's contribution to World War II. The fact is that most Westerners don't know very much about China's experiences in World War II, and they're often surprised to hear that more than 14 million Chinese died during the war, maybe 80 to 100 million became refugees, that China was responsible for holding down more than 500,000 Japanese troops. So important contributions and sacrifices by China are now, I think, becoming of increasing interest to Western readers.
Rana spent 10 years writing the book. There are many difficulties in collecting the materials and evidences during the wartime, but he never gave up.
I think the main thing is that a lot of the materials from the wartime period simply didn't survive. After all, China was in a real state of turbulence and turmoil after the Japanese invasion, and so it wasn't easy to keep good records and statistics. The government often found it very hard to keep an exact tally on what was happening. And so that also you have to remember that many parts of China were burned in fires or bombed or otherwise attacked, and lots of documents which might otherwise have been kept were destroyed at that time. So one of the greatest obstacles was the fact that China had such difficulty in holding materials together during that period. And we had to use a lot of other methods and sources to try and restore that story, which had been destroyed in many ways.
In his book, Rana mentioned a number of battles, and Taiyuan is the most impressive one.
Taiyuan is an impressive battle because it shows the ability of the Chinese troops at the time to change their tactics. Taiyuan was not a battle where it was possible to drop bombs or to have large armies clashing with each other, because it was a small city with little alleys that were hard to penetrate. So small groups of troops were used to almost take part in hand-to-hand combat. It was quite different from battle in many other places, and it showed that it was possible, with flexible tactics, for the Chinese to act against a much more technologically superior enemy, such as the Japanese.
Rana said the tragic, titanic struggle that China waged in the 1930s and 1940s was not just for its own dignity and survival, but for the victory of all the allies. Without China's resistance, the situation would have been much harder for Western allies on the Asian front.
I think it's very important that we record history and also the memories of those who survived and took part in these events, particularly as the very last survivors are beginning finally to die away. In recent months, I've spoken to veterans of China's wartime experience, some of them soldiers, some of them civilians, and they're now aged 91, 94, 99 in one case. The fact is that if we don't record their stories, they will disappear into the sands of history. And it's really important that the stories from this crucial time in the formation of China's modern history are remembered.
Japan invaded northeast China in September 1931. However, historians agreed that the full-scale invasion began on July the 7th, 1937, when a bridge that acted as a crucial access point to Beijing was attacked by the Japanese.